Welcome. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision studios in the UK, you're watching the BVTV network. My guest today has kindly agreed to make a quick return to BVTV because she has, to my mind, some valuable insight and thinking to give you around one of today's key challenges, motivating people. I say key change today, not that it always hasn't been, but a bit more so today as the pandemic, remote working, even furlough has dulled the energy and aspirations of many workers. I know of many leaders who are struggling with how to motivate those workers and actually keep those workers. My guest is an expert on motivation. She's written this book, Leading for Learning. Now, I don't want you to think this is a magic book, because you can see through it, but it's green on the top and we've got green screen. I've given everything away, but there's lots of magic inside the book. That's what you want to know. It's called Leading for Learning. Please come and meet again the co-founder of ontosglobal, Lisa J Koss. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thank you, Malcolm. I'm happy to be here again. Thanks for inviting me back.
And you are on the Bay in San Francisco today, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area in a city called Berkeley, California, and it's the University of California, Berkeley. It's very well known. With San Francisco is within sight across the water.
Oh, wow. Lisa, many thanks for making such a fast return to us. But as I said in my opening piece, motivation today, I think, is a key challenge. Viewers and listeners, I'll be talking to Lisa in three parts. First part, I know it's almost a silly question, but what's the right and wrong way to motivate? In part two, I want to ask her about motivation today. What in her mind has changed or will be changing, and how should leaders respond? And in part three, I'm delving into what we may call continuing motivation, keeping it going in a genuine and trusting atmosphere. So let's move to part one. I know it's almost a silly question, Lisa, but what's the right and the wrong way to motivate? I've heard of pushing and pulling tactics, and I've been subject to them myself, by the way. So what's your thoughts here?
Mm-hmm. This is such a big topic, and there's many directions to go with it. I'm going to try to just talk about what seems to me essential for leaders to understand. Just in broad terms, when I think about motivation, I think about motivation as being energy. It's just energy. Mm-hmm. Do you have energy? And then does it have any direction to it? And so this is where leadership already comes in. So if I have some energy, or if I can garner it or get clear on what it is that I want, and then how to channel it, that's a simple way to think about motivation. And motivation is highly personal. I can't assume that what motivates me motivates others. And so that means that if I'm leading others, I need to understand that person. I need to understand what motivates them. And it's not always as simple as just saying, what motivates you? Because people have varying answers to that question. And so there's lots of ways to get at what motivates people. But if you think about it as just channeling energy that people already naturally have, and we know this from the research, we know that people, it used to be thought in the management sciences that people were not motivated and they needed to be kind of whipped and carrot and stick and all this kind of thing. But in fact, it's not true at all. And that's been debunked decades ago, but it's amazing the number of people in the workplace and managers who continue to lead people in a way that would that corresponds with what's called theory X, which is that people don't really have motivation, that you actually need to drive. But we know better now. And theory Y is what was presented in the research. McGregor was the researcher at the time, and it still holds true decades later, that it's really about helping, knowing what is motivating to somebody and then channeling it. So is there a bad way is there a right or wrong way to motivate? No, I think many people take it from an outside in approach. In our leadership work, we're always taking it from an inside out, meaning I need to know who you are before I can even try to be useful and help channel that energy.
Wow, yeah, I really like that energy approach there. I've been subject in the past working for a company or two that one was a major American toy company. We won't mention them, but a big UK company. They sell toy kits and things like that. And this was late 60s. And I was one week out of the 46 salesperson people, I was number one salesperson. And the sales director sent out his usual he called it motivational sales letter. It says, Gallagher, not Malcolm, Gallagher is number one this week. Let's hope he continues it rather than his usual pathetic efforts.
He didn't really say that. I'm sure he didn't.
I've still got the letter, the Romeo copied letter there. And he used to ring sales people's wives and say, do you know how poor your husband is doing at the moment and how that's going to affect his bonus? That was the end of the 60s, which is 50 years ago there. But I still think that it exists at the moment there, that people haven't learned exactly what you're saying about this energy. But surely we've got a new generation. We've got 5 generations in the workplace at the moment, haven't we? But we've got the millennials and Generation X. They won't stand for that, will they?
No, they don't. And in fact, I write about that in the book, that is one of the reasons why coaching in this case is one of those leadership vehicles. It's a leadership, it's a kind of an approach. It's a vehicle for actually doing more with the time that we have. We're more busy than ever. These times are different. If we don't think about our organizations as places to learn and grow, where else do we do it in our lives? We're so busy. And so leadership really is, it's contingent upon our leaders to actually engage with people personally, because motivation is personal. We are asking people to do so much in their lives. We're asking them to do so much work that if we don't create the spaces for people to think through what they're doing and why, where is their energy? What direction is it going? Why is it going that way? Is that where they want it to go? If we don't take the time and create these spaces for people to have those conversations, they won't have them. And people get confused. There's internal resistances, there's external forces. It's a confusing time, especially now. Yeah. And so leaders have a fantastic opportunity to be a kind of a guiding light and putting together what is a workplace, which is really, back to the word vehicle, it's a vehicle for people to get what they want or what they need. Organizations are wonderful places if we know what we're doing there as individuals.
Yes.
We don't like, actually, we like vacation. Everybody loves vacation. However, without a sense of purpose and direction and what is it that I want, we're not actually happy. And organizations are an opportunity for leaders to connect what people care about with what the organization has to offer. And if these things can come together, it becomes a holy grail of positivity, really, as long as the individual is clear. And so, of course, we're not clear. We're often not clear in life. And so leaders can actually, with good skills, they can actually drive these conversations with people so that they can more and more align with what the organization has to offer and what exactly they're looking for.
Brilliant, brilliant. Lisa, before we move to part 2, I'd just like to remind viewers and listeners of your website, your URL, which is, obviously, viewers, you can see it on the screen behind me, but I'll spell it out for listeners. It's ontos, ontos global.com, ontosglobal.com. Now, Lisa's book is called Leading for Learning, How Managers Can Get Business Results Through Developmental Coaching and Inspire Deep Employee Commitment, and it's published by Routledge. Lisa, time for part 2. I want to ask you about motivation today. Now, not the motivation I've had in the past, but motivation today. What in your mind has changed or will be changing about motivation, and how should leaders be responding?
Yeah, I mean, I think motivation, it's part of human nature. So I don't think fundamentally motivation has changed, but I do think our environment, our times have gotten more and more confusing because there's more of everything around us. And so you see a lot written these days about the importance of stopping and reflecting. there's a concept in tennis where, if any of the listeners are tennis players, you'll know immediately what I mean, that when you hit a ball, there's something called dwell time. You actually want the ball to dwell on the racket. You actually want to do that so that you have good contact with the strings, and that you can kind of control where it's going, and you can make it spin, and you can do something. You want it to stay on the racket, ironically enough, instead of just ricochet. And there's something about that that's relevant, I think, today in these times, because we're moving faster. There's more stuff going on all the time. And at the same time, we need to slow down. And why? Because if we can't get clear on our purpose, on what it is that we're doing and why, i.e. our motivation, it's an exercise of just kind of craziness and lack of clarity. So again, a place for leaders is to help in these times people become either more focused, because this pandemic and this environment has been very confusing. Everybody has responded differently. We can't predict how. Maybe some people don't find it confusing. Maybe they find it settling. I have a client who says this pandemic is, selfishly enough, is the best thing that ever happened to me. There's a number of people actually have said that they've, allowed them to stop traveling, to refocus. On the other hand, other people are traumatized. They've had a very personal and deep experience with COVID, either with themselves, their families, their loved ones. And when you become less focused, you become more detached from your goals.
Yes, yeah.
And when you become detached from your goals, you're no longer able to channel that energy, and you're kind of drifting. Again, leadership. Where are people? What do they want? And so at this time, I think leaders who know how to coach, which is a wonderful medium for this channeling I'm talking about, can happen. It doesn't happen in big speeches. It doesn't happen in emails. It's a kind of a leadership. It's a communication vehicle where you can have those conversations about helping people get clear and then know what's their next step after they do. And that can be a process of a day, or it could be a process of 9 months or 12 months. It can be short or long, depending on the situation.
Yeah. Do you think, like I do, that that leaders have been lacking in coaching skills? They've got up the ladder, and then they've got more responsibility, and they've forgotten about the people that they're leading.
I think that it's more about people turning, because of the pace of work, people telling instead of asking. Why? Because we're stressed. When I get stressed, I start telling more. I admit it. And so if I'm not aware of that, I will keep telling. And that doesn't work. We talked about right and wrong. Yeah, you can be influenced. You can do what you're told or what you're advised for the short term, but it's not really sustainable. So what comes up in business these days are clients and companies who want to introduce into the organization mentoring. For me, the mentoring has a place. However, I think of mentoring much of the time as unskilled coaching.
Yes.
Yeah. Why? Because people just tell, well, here's what I did, or here's what I think. It's just more telling. Yeah. I mean, of course it can be meaningful. Of course, I've had mentors in my life, especially in the first years of my life, the first 20 years of business. I would say, boy, I could use a lot of mentoring. I still can use it. However, it's not as valuable to me anymore. I really need somebody to help me discover me more every day. And then I can channel my energy the way I know it can be leveraged for both the good of me and the organization.
There's that channeling of the energy again. It's lovely concept. Thanks, Lisa. Now for part 3. I'm delving into what we may call continuing motivation. How to keep it going in a genuine and trusting atmosphere. Sometimes things come in, or systems come in, or concepts come into a business. It's flavor of the month for a while, and then something else is happening, and there's another challenge here, and they forget about it. But, motivation has got to be continuing and embedded, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's the environment will always keep changing and moving around and shifting. We'll be asked to do all kinds of things we do or don't want to do. And that's actually the key, what we do or don't want to do. That resistance that we feel internally is very healthy. I talk about this also in the book about resistance. And it's such a great concept because people automatically think it's bad to resist. Of course, it's not bad to resist. It's human. Before I reach out and pet that dog, my internal compass might say, be careful.
Yeah. Danger.
Or pay attention here. What's the ears doing? What's the tail doing? And so it's the same thing with people in all these situations. When we resist something, our red flag is up. And sometimes it's just unnecessary, and sometimes it's very necessary. Yeah. And so there's something about taking the time to talk about all of these things popping up in our environments at work that we can process with each other. It's not that it's that we can get to know the people in our organization, to see all these situations are opportunities for us to know people. And that will help orient how to lead them. And so there's this concept that a CEO client of ours uses, which is called the calendar test. And you talk about sustainable, how do you keep it going? Does your calendar have on it time allotted for people to share and talk? So first of all, you can put structure in place for yourself to make sure these conversations happen. You can get yourself some skills about how to do that. And then finally, you can also use the moment itself every time these things pop up, like you mentioned, that you can just ask a couple of questions, a few questions about how you see that, why you see it that way. And it's not to answer a particular question, but it's to keep knowing the person, which is connected to what motivates them, which is connected to how you lead them. So do you take 2 or 3 minutes to say, what's your reaction to this personally, this new initiative? Or what's your reaction to what the group is saying here? Ask the group, let's just talk about our reactions. And that is helping people speak to what is going on in the environment, and making time for that teaches us about how we need to lead based on what's going on internally, as opposed to just saying, here's where it is. Good luck, everyone. Go.
Right. Yeah.
And that does not help because that's not sustainable.
Yeah. Lisa, before we finish, can I just ask you about your book here? Yes. Tell me, I've got it obviously, and I'm encouraging viewers and listeners to get the book and from Routledge. But I want you to tell me in a short period, please, then, what you think was within the book that you would say to people to go to early to get a grasp on that's going to help you in motivating people today.
Yeah. In motivating people. Well, I've gotten a lot of comments about my chapter on trust. Mm-hmm. The trust chapter, nobody wants to be coached by somebody that they don't trust.
Yes. Nobody
wants that. I don't want that. And so a lot of people do have trouble garnering trust, and especially and you can get better at trust. And so I have a set of principles in there about trust, about how to do it. This is a very, very practical book. I'm a very pragmatic person. So there's a 7-step model about how do you guide in a conversation. And it begins with trust and how do you have it in general. And there's kind of some general principles. And then what are the things that you do in the moment to just sit down and start a conversation? What are some of those principles? So trust is a huge topic as well. There's 100,000 books about trust. And I think what I've done is kind of whittled it down to what people can do specifically that just help build it, who help get the conversation going, and actually maybe even help get the relationship going. So that's the first. And then just sort of how do you do more with your time? So just chatting, nobody feels they have time to just get to know people. And yet, if we have 20 minutes and we know where we're going and we know a little bit about the direction of our conversation, we can do more with those 20 minutes. And that's what this book is about as well.
Excellent. Yeah. And I love that comment you're making about trust. It is so important. Out of the 600 plus interviews that I've done since March 2020, the theme keeps coming back, how many leaders have lost the trust of employees, especially as in America, you've recently had the Great Resignation. I think it was 4 million Americans resigned in April alone, and we've got the same in the UK, 1 in 4 leaving. So when you actually get down to it, they just don't trust the leader or don't trust the business that they're going to be cared for, looked after. It's quite frightening, isn't it?
It is, and you used the magic word, which is care. So we need to care about ourselves so that we're caring about others. And people leave people. They do not leave organizations, as is commonly cited, and we forget it anyway, despite the fact it's commonly cited. So what is happening right now in this moment? Am I with you? Am I not with you? Like right now with you, Malcolm, like, can I be with you and talking with you? But like, what is created in this moment? What is the experience? And if I think about leadership as an experience in the moment, the world changes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, excellent. I started this interview by saying motivation is key today. Many leaders are struggling to find the way forward. I trust my guest, Lisa J Koss, as with this brilliant book, and I'm saying the magic book again there, the magic's inside, Leading for Learning, giving you the right food for thought. Many thanks for coming back to BVTV, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. It's a pleasure as always. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy working with you.